What's up, guys, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions came in for this week. I took them both on Twitter at Quincy. Follow me there, and on YouTube on the community tab. And again, if you want to make sure that your question makes the show, or at least has a chance to make the show, please make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that notification bell, because I put the post out about Thursday at noon for the questions, asking for questions for Q&A on the community tab on YouTube. That's where I will always ask questions. Sometimes I will ask questions on Twitter. So subscribe, notify, and then also follow me on Twitter if you always want to be aware when those prompts come up, so you can have a chance to get your question on the show. I know a lot of people ask, how can they get their question on the show? I know a lot of people sometimes leave their questions in the comment section of like the last week's question and answer video. It's too hard for me to kind of dig back and find those questions in order to get them on this show in a timely manner. So I always post a prompt in the community tab. And if you want to make sure you see that, you have to be subscribed and notified. Also, sometimes I ask questions or ask for questions on Twitter, and you can follow me there at Quincy. So now that that is kind of cleared up, so you guys know where to go if you want to have your questions showed on the show, let's start with the questions. And the first question is from Ace Boogie of New Stripe City, my guy, who says, when will Ben retire? I imagine this is it, right? This is the farewell tour, and this is kind of obvious what the Steelers are kind of doing for this season. It's the same thing you'll see in every sports franchise, where a franchise, a team, wants to kind of say farewell in a very respectful way to somebody that franchise deems a legend, right? And there's no question the Steelers franchise deems Big Ben a legend. He's won 2 Super Bowls there, a lot of great memories, longtime quarterback, probably the best quarterback in Steelers history. So they want to make sure that they go out and do it right. And what you see on teams like that is that they try to put together a competitive team without breaking the bank to put together that competitive team. Think of the Miami Heat, the last year of Dwayne Wade. Think of the Lakers the last year of Kobe Bryant. A lot of teams do this, right, where they're saying farewell to a legend. You don't see it as often in the NFL because it's such a cutthroat league that guys like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning will just be cut outright, and that could happen. But what it looks like Pittsburgh's setting up to do is to give that farewell season, right? They're going to try to be competitive, hopefully over 500, and have Ben go out on a higher note than if he would have retired after that wild card game. So I think that's when he'll retire, is at the end of this season. He's no longer kind of welcome in Pittsburgh, and if he extends his career anywhere else, one, I don't know who's going to really be eager to take Ben, depending on how he ends the season, and two, it would just kind of feel tacky if he continues his career after this season. I think he's going to be done after this year. The Pittsburgh Steelers are definitely done with Ben after this year. It looks like that's going to be the case. So I would anticipate that this is the last season of Ben's career, no matter what Ben says during the season, because he always says something different or alludes to retirement or alludes to playing for 5 more years. He's really inconsistent on that. I think this is his last year. The next question comes from Nicholas Stowe, who says, with so many QBs and wide receivers potentially being taken in the first round, do you think this helps the Browns' chances of getting a steal? This is a good question, and it brings up something I think is important, right? When you hear things like Mac Jones in the top 5, and Justin Fields and Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, like 4 or 5 quarterbacks going in the first round, that is good news, right? The more quarterbacks that go in the first round, the more teams that aren't taking away from piles of players that you need. The more wide receivers that go in the first round, the more teams taking away from piles of players that you have no use for, right? The Browns aren't drafting a quarterback in the first round. They aren't drafting a wide receiver unless something shocking happens within the next month or so, right? So knowing that, the more hype, we should be aiding this hype. I know I've been very vocal about the fact that Mac Jones has no business being taken in the first half of the first round, quite frankly, before a lot of these guys were just much better prospects. But hey, look, if they want to take Mac Jones, that can only help the Browns, right? Because the Browns are trying to get guys to slide to him at 26 or slide to him past 15 so they can make a reasonable trade up to go get one of these guys that they really like. So the more quarterbacks that go, if Zach Wilson is gone in the first round, that's great news. If Trey Lance is gone in the first round, that's great news. If Mac Jones is gone in the first round, that's great news. And if Justin Fields is gone in the first round, that's great news. That's 5 quarterbacks, 5 players you really weren't going to have any reason to draft off the board, and 4 more guys or 5 more guys that are available that might have not been available at that point, right? I want the whole top 5 to be nothing but quarterbacks. That's what I want it to be, right? And then I want the next 15 picks to be wide receivers, because that can help the Browns. And offensive linemen, right? The offensive linemen are going to go in the first round, the wide receivers are going to go in the first round, and the quarterbacks are going to go in the first round. And the more that happens, the more you have a chance of a Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah or a J.C. Horn or a Jalen Phillips falling to you at 26 or being available within the range of a very reasonable trade up. So yes, this is good news for the Cleveland Browns. This is what you want to hear. This is the stuff that's going to enable this team to be able to get some steals, because the 3 position groups that are going to go heavy in this first round, quarterback, wide receiver, and offensive line, 3 groups the Browns have virtually no use for. We don't need another first round wide receiver. We don't need another quarterback, and we don't need more offensive linemen. We've already filled those holes. So now we can sit back and wait for a good player in a non-desired position group to fall further than they would because of all the madness and the rush to get one of those coveted wide receivers that are going to be sliding off the board, or offensive linemen or quarterbacks. So this is all good stuff. Next question comes from June, who says, if there's a scenario where J.C. Horn, Jalen Phillips, or Koramoah is there at 16, would you trade up? And if you would, who would you pick? You must watch the channel a lot, because I have talked about this, right? Those are the 3 players, in my opinion, that you would trade up for in the first round. J.C. Horn is definitely cornerback number 1, in my opinion. Jalen Phillips is the best edge rusher in this class for the Cleveland Browns, and Koramoah is the only linebacker worth taking in the first round. To me, I know a lot of people like Micah Parsons or Zaven Collins. That's the guy I would go for if I were the Cleveland Browns. So if one of those 3 guys, or if all 3 of those guys are available and pick 15 happens, right? So after pick 15, those 3 guys are available. The Browns need to start making some calls to be at least at 18, or if not 17, to get one of those guys, because those are 3 guys who can be starters, not just starters on your defense, but starters in an area of need. That's what you need to do, right? That's what the Browns need. I would absolutely be a huge fan of that. The next question comes from Daniel, who says, are we using the carryover? And if not, we should use it this year to go all in on a Super Bowl. No, they should not. The Browns should not use this carryover that they've been saving in the cap space. And if you guys don't know, what he's talking about is the cap runoff. The Browns have about $30 million accumulated in cap runoff, which means that for 1 year, they can go $30 million over the cap if they need to, right? So it's kind of like bird rights when it comes to the NBA, where you can go over the cap to get your own guy. This is just a similar concept, but instead of it for one specific player, it's a allotment that you kind of accumulate over the years. So they can go over $30 million in one salary cap year. The reason you're not going to do it this year or next year, more than likely, even though those are your 2 years in a window, is because one, the cap's still going to be kind of hurt from the virus, right? You don't know what the cap number is going to be, but 2 seasons from now, a couple of things are going to happen that are going to make you want to use that cap rollover. One, the cap's going to go up, right? So if the cap's at 180 now and you use the rollover, you're going to be 210 for 1 year, and you kind of use it that 1 year, and then it goes back down to like 200 or 180. What's more likely to happen is that the year before the cap goes up, which is going to be probably the 2022 season, that they use it, have the cap go up to probably like 230, 235, and then the cap naturally will be at 230 the next year when the TV deals kick in and raise the salary cap. Or you can go crazy and get to 260 the year the cap goes up in like 2-3 years. So there's a lot more different ways that they can use it. And also keep in mind that cap rollover is going to be so that they can hide some bonus years in Baker's contract when they extend them, so that they can have some extra money to keep a Nick Chubb, so they can have some extra money to keep a Denzel Ward, right? That's going to be a strategically used year when it comes to extending all these young guys, so they can have a year where they go over, give everybody their guarantees that year so they can be over the cap that year, and then hit lower cap numbers after that, so that they can kind of manage the cap in a better way. That's what that's going to be used for. I don't know if it's going to be really used to bring in a ton of free agents. I think it's going to be used strategically to keep their own players. But I'm sorry if that was a little bit too technical or hard to follow, but that's what I think they're going to use the cap rollover for. And I think that would be a smart use of it, right? You want to use that extra space to keep guys that you've really invested into. The next question comes from Seth Gallen, who says, hey, Q, who do you think will be the green dot this year on the defense, Walker or JJ3? John Johnson has experience doing it. So does Anthony Walker. They like to keep it at linebacker. I think it'll be John Johnson just because that's the guy they invested in a lot. Like Anthony Walker's on a 1-year deal, so it wouldn't make sense. You would have to transfer it next year. With John Johnson, you're going to have him for the next few years, so it would be smart to go with him. The next question comes from Yoshi, who says, are you going to be streaming the draft? Absolutely. The first day and the second day, we'll look at the numbers and see if we're going to do the third day, because the third day can be long. I might do like an hour or 2 hours on the third day, but definitely the first day, definitely the second day. And then, once we get to the third day, we'll talk about the third day. But yes, I will be streaming. And if you want to make sure you don't miss that, subscribe, be notified so you don't miss it. The next question comes from Justin, who says, hey, Q, all this talk about adding or replacing, who from last season do you think will step up the most? It's going to be one of the young linebackers, either Mac Wilson, who I don't think it's going to be, Jacob Phillips, who I think it has a high chance to be, and Taki, who I think has been showing development in that way, that I would probably bet that he's the most likely to kind of have a breakout year. I think Taki, because of Anthony Walker, what he brings to the defense, the veteran leadership, and the counsel that he kind of brings at that position, and the way he helps young linebackers improve, I think he'll be real helpful for a guy like Taki. Next question comes from Jack Spence, who says, what are your thoughts on extending Denzel Ward? I hear a couple of friends think it's better to let him walk through the injury concerns, but personally, especially after last season and the depleted secondary, it's noticeable when he's on and off the field. I think he's a top corner who's young. Can you keep him with the speed? What do you think? He's going to be an interesting situation, because one, you just have to see how these next couple of years go when it comes to him being able to stay healthy, because that's going to be a factor. But the fact is, Denzel Ward's probably a top 5 corner in the NFL. And it's really hard to let those guys walk, right? I get the injury concerns. The good news is that he hasn't had any major injuries, right? Any injuries that would kind of affect his ability to play. He's just had kind of minor out a week or two injuries. And honestly, last year, a lot of what he was out for was because he got in the virus protocol. You can't really blame him for that. So he had a relatively healthy year. I know he always misses a game or two, but you have to ask yourself the question, right? Is 14 or 15 regular season games of Denzel Ward better than somebody who isn't Denzel Ward but will play 17 games, I would go with the 15 games of Denzel Ward, quite honestly, because he's a top 5 corner. You can't just let those guys walk. The next question comes from Rams House, who says, do you think the Browns will have a #1 defense? Considering how some of the great stud talents the Browns have brought in, it is leading me to believe they are top 5 at least. If they can sign Clowney, that would make me believe in the defense even more. It's hard to predict the top 5 defense, right? Because to be a top 5 defense is much more just about, it's more about chemistry and guys knowing each other and guys kind of trusting where each other is going to be versus just raw talent, right? Defense doesn't work that way where you can just get all this raw talent, throw it on the field, and just see what happens. It's not that simple. So top 5 is a tough ask. I just want them to be top 15. And with what they have on the roster, I think that the expectations should be top 15 defense, right? If Joe Woods does not produce a top 15 defense and these players all stay relatively healthy, then that's a concern, right? Because I think he has enough there to make a top 15 defense. I do not expect this defense to be top 10 or top 5. We'll have to see how everybody kind of gels, and it would be very rare to have this many free agents at key positions come into a defense and that defense just be immediately top 5. Like it's rare. It can happen. It happened with the Steelers with Minkah Fitzpatrick, so it's definitely possible. I just wouldn't put that on this defense or put that expectation level on them. And they don't need to be a top 5 defense. They just need to be top 15. But that's it for this week's questions. Again, guys, thank you so much for asking these questions. And again, guys, have a great day. Have a good night.